Welcome to the Huffing Spirit Podcast, where we take you from the sacred to the profane, from the serious to the silly, from the outer to the inner, and from the guru back to you. Join your playful podcast guides, Alex Hindley and Natalie Dick, as they bring you back to a grounded and more authentic approach to spirituality.
Episode, Alex and I, Natalie, are going to be diving into what is a good student. Just as we discovered and kind of unpacked what is a good teacher, guide, healer, whatever label name you want to put on it, there's major necessity for being a good student, the one on the receiving end of the help. So yeah, let's dive into this topic. And I feel like there's a bazillion things. I mean, I can think of in my last 10 years of clients that didn't resonate, or frustrating clients, or like that kind of level of expectations that clients would have on you as the guide, as the teacher. So
to heal and fix everything about them.
To fix them, yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
To fix. Like, just here I am, do it, heal me, here I am. That kind of thing. So yeah, where do you want to start, Alex?
I think we should start every episode with our why. Why are we doing this? Why are we talking about this? Why is it important?
All right, so why?
For me, it's a great counterpoint to our episode that we did about how to find a good teacher. It's a yin-yang relationship where it's going in and out of itself. And I think too often as a student, we give our power over to somebody else. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about how to find a good teacher, which is somebody that like holds the space for you to make those mistakes as you reconnect to your own inner teacher. Mm-hmm. And just as it's important to know what a good teacher is, you have to know how to be a good student, because one, if you're thick-skulled like me, Spirit's gonna fucking smack you over the head multiple times with a 2x4 until you like figure it out.
Bam your body.
Yeah.
I get the picture of the Flintstones, like bam. That's how Spirit's gonna come in.
Yeah, and for me, like, Spirit is the same teacher, just wearing a different mask multiple times. You're like, oh, you can do that in Aikido. Can you do that in your marriage yet?
Yeah.
No, you can't.
The trickster energy. Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah. You think you got it all figured out? Guess what? I'm going to come over here and just like drop in as this character just to fuck you up.
Yeah, and so many people, you can work out, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to get the results.
Mm-hmm.
It's like those 70-year-old guys that are like trying to do curls in the gym and they're throwing their whole body into it. And you're like, this is a fucking isolated muscle exercise. I just want to like hold them and be like, just go lower weight.
Stabilize your pelvis, for crying out loud. Stabilize yourself.
So, yeah, that's where it's important to me.
Yeah, I think that being a good student is absolutely, like you said, it's the yin and yang energy is dynamic. It's like, it's got to flow back and forth, right? And if you are not open and willing to work with that teacher, there's that resistance. You're going to hit that resistance, right? And for any good student, you have to be open. To what Spirit is going to provide for you.
Yeah, and I think with what we talked about before too, you have to know when you have a good teacher, because you can, I don't want to say it like that because we have an idea around the term surrender, but there is kind of a surrendering that happens.
Yeah, of course there is.
To them. So you're allowing yourself to let them guide you back to you. And there's many different ways that your ego can protect the image of what you think you are. Mm-hmm. And the ego is very, very aware. This is something that is born within every person, and it's been around for hundreds of thousands of years within us. It's smart. It knows when stuff's coming down the pipe. Just like the second year of class, I was very hesitant to do it. And now I realize in retrospect, like my ego was like, oh, shit's going to get shaken up real fast. Like
I'm in danger.
Yeah. I'm not going to think I'm as cool as I thought I was before.
Yeah. There is nothing more humbling than the ego getting just shot down, right? Like, and that is the willingness as the student to be aware that you have an ego, right? And understandably, it is going to get challenged in more ways than you know. And I think a lot of people have this concept, and again, this might be from the bypassing love and light community, that when you do your healing, it's like all rainbows and puppy dogs, and get ready because you're going to be really, really uncomfortable. And I think that one of the most important things for students, that when they are with a good guide, a good teacher, that you got to get comfortable with the discomfort. That has got to be your new motto, because if you can't sit with your shadow, sit with all of the feelings within your body that you have been conditioned your whole life to ignore, because we favor rational linear thinking, like I'm going to think my way out of this instead of actually feel it. A good guide and a healer is going to guide you to feel. And if you are not prepared to go into those uncomfortable spots within your body, you're really not accessing much. You're really not getting into the depth, right?
Yeah, and it can be a ugly, hurtful, painful, beautiful, wonderful process.
It's all messy.
But you reminded me of one of the themes of class. It's all there to help you to integrate deeper levels of understanding, deeper levels of knowledge, deeper abilities to heal yourself. Is what you're actually tapping into. So all the stuff that's happening for you is actually happening for you to integrate higher levels of understanding your own being. Yeah. I love what you were saying, because I was talking about that with a buddy today. We're talking about therapy, and you can tell, like, because he's doing the work because he's getting kicked in the teeth, and he says that he's like, yeah, he's giving me advice on stuff, and he's like, yeah, it's gonna be painful, and you're like, so I think that's a part of it too, is you have to know you're gonna get some bumps and bruises along the way.
Yeah, and if you don't, what are you really doing? if you're not engaging in the level of discomfort that you haven't gone to before, like, what are you truly engaging in?
Spiritual masturbation.
Yeah, exactly.
You're only fucking yourself.
Yeah. True. So it's like that is it's like, what are you actually engaging with? If you are only accessing the love and the bliss and the happiness, right? Like, and then we're getting into like the expectations of thinking positive movement, which is total garbage, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm going to go to go to a healer, go to a guide, and I want them to help me feel happy, right?
Mm.
And it's really interesting because I had this conversation with a friend a couple days ago, and I was telling him that I do mirror work. I do a lot of shadow work in the mirror, and I engage with, like, my shadows via the mirror. And I was telling him a story. I'm like, oh, I did mirror work the other day, and I was crying in the mirror, right? He was like, wouldn't it be more effective if you just like thought happy thoughts and thought more beautiful things? And I'm like, oh, what are those? Right? And this is such a common assumption. It's like, if you only think beauty and happy thoughts. Life is going to be happy. And that is like, it's so far from the truth in the healing process. So if you are, I kind of, this is a fairly old friend, new friend that I've just been like chatting with, and
new friend. Okay.
Somebody that I knew way back because I just moved back to my home.
Okay. Right.
Anyway, so I was telling him, and he's just like, he thinks I'm weird because I do all this like, shadow work and energy work, and a lot of this terminology is very new to people, right? Like they're like apparently this guy. So if you're a student thinking that you're going to a coach, a teacher, a guide, or somebody who is going to be helping you, get ready to get rocked. That's and not rocked like where your whole life you derail your whole entire life. That's
and
you don't become an unfunctioning human being, but it can rock you in ways that but underneath that discomfort, all of that is like a higher level of bliss and happiness that you have never experienced before, right?
And well, as I had a teacher explain it to me like this, as you expand your light, the top of the iceberg, you also expand the shadow as well too.
Mm-hmm.
So your understanding of your being is this, and as you start to grow, right, your shadow is growing as well too. So you also have deeper levels of integration. You're like, wow, the highest is high and the low is lower than it's ever been. And you're also like opened up to that much more from spirit to feel those things on all spectrums,
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. Like now my mind is reeling with like so many visuals. That's a really great analogy because it's like you can I've heard this saying that like the more grief, the depths of your sorrow and despair that you can feel is like the higher level of like happiness and bliss that you can experience. Because in this
look out, Bliss Town, here I come.
Yeah, it's like where's the darkness? Where is it? I want to get it. And like this is literally how I look at shadow work now. It's like I love doing shadow work. I look forward to it because I know on the other side of it, on the other end of the pole, we're talking about like different polarities of energies. It's like once you can integrate this shadow, integrate this darkness and allow it to be there, when you're kind of bringing in all these little fragmented, forgotten, lost parts of yourself, your energy system is just so much more expanded. Like you said, it's like much bigger on the top, but then it's like almost infinite to the amount of light that we can experience, but it's also in the same wavelength. It's like the same infinite amount of shadow because it's like there's collective shadow. There's so much, right?
Yeah, and for me, like I try to look at things like from a Taoistic perspective. I don't know if that's a word or if I just made it up, but
no, that's a word. I'm gonna
Taoistic.
Sure.
Whatever. So
Taoist.
The one side, the Wu Wei, the yin energy is this too shall pass, and the other is like I can and I will with the yang energy, masculine and feminine. And it is that. And for me, it's very similar to like The Alchemist. And I love The Alchemist in a lot of different ways. But I think for me that I live by that book and the principle of when you're on a new path, the path will open up. It's going to be easy for you to begin with. And like when I first started getting into plant medicine, I was like telling everybody about it. My heart was open. I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is so cool. And then your heart closes, it goes back to normal for a little bit, and you're like, oh shit, the world's really cold. But there was all these cool things that unfolded on the path from Cleveland to get me to Chicago, which is where I met you. And but if you keep getting resistance from the beginning, you're probably meant to do that at a different time or not do it at all. But like once you're on the path, you're going to have those obstacles. But if the obstacles appear like right as you're, packing up your bag to go out the door to get on the path, might be different for me. So, yeah, I mean, like the shadow work is amazing, and people think that is bad because you say shadow. Like shadow has infinite possibility in it too. It's your potential you're not aware of yourself as well.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's also a kick in the balls because when you get to that spot spiritually, you can't blame other people. You're looking at your own stuff. You get
because the other person is the mirror reflecting back to you that which you need to work on.
Yeah, and if it didn't bug you, you wouldn't be triggered. If I was like, oh, the sky is green, you'd be like, yeah, whatever, the sky's green. Yeah. But if I'm like, this political system is the way that you need to look at the world, you'd be like, go fuck yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so being a good student, it's very important to be open to all of the discomforts in the healing journey, because in your trajectory of healing, it's not linear. It can feel like this is another thing that people have expectations in their healing journey. They're like, well, it's going to be that upward ladder. It's going to go like this.
It's this archetype of progress that we think is like up and to the right.
Yeah, it's like capitalism. I'm just going to keep making money. It's just
everything grows.
Growing. It's just
everything grows.
Like that's kind of impossible. It's like, so this impossible trajectory that it goes, up in some linear fashion, but it doesn't at all. Like you're going to have days where you feel like you're taking 10 steps ahead, and then the next week you may be 20 steps back, and it feels like 20 steps back, but because there's so much happening on the back end, so much integration, so much having to feel what you haven't felt in, I don't know, 20 years, if this is the first time you're going to therapy, or 40 years, or whatever age you are listening to this, you haven't felt yourself. You haven't experienced yourself. So the moment you open up the energy system and open up your emotional body, this is shit people don't even know how to feel. They think their way through life. So the moment you open that up, your trajectory in healing is like, I have to feel all of this grief, all of the despair, all of the rage that I've suppressed or repressed my whole entire life, right? So it's fascinating when people think that they're like, oh, it's like, woohoo, love and light. No, honey.
It's, for me, it's a spiral.
Yeah. I mean, it can be a spiral. It depends, because it's like, for me, when I see, I guess the visual of healing, it's like you go up and then you feel like you're coming back, and then you're going forward, and then you're coming down a little bit. And even that is not predictable. The pattern is not that predictable, because we don't know what life events are going to be outside of you. We don't know what you're going to be kind of digging up in the rubble of your traumas and all of that stuff.
And trauma is, I mean, that'll definitely be its own episode, but like, it's crazy. There's times that I go into sacred space, I might take a gummy and sit by myself and just like start contemplating and reflecting, and then you feel into hurt that you felt from just like a roommate, and you're just like, oh, I thought I was over this, and it turns out like, no, that was a toxic environment that I was living in, and that person didn't respect my boundaries. They didn't give me the love that I was giving them, and so you think you're over stuff, and it's the littlest stuff, and again, it's all coming up for you to integrate it to different higher levels of understanding yourself.
And to add to that, it's like it comes in layers, right? Like just because you think you got over something, you didn't. And I'll give you a personal example. So, moving back to my hometown, I left London, Ontario when I was 27. I left.
Fuck you! I'm never coming back.
Fuck you, I'm out of here, run them out. Peace. Anyway, so and it was in my 20s. I was really messy and I drank a lot. I had a lot of numbing activities because I had, my own personal trauma. But so it's funny being back. I'm re-experiencing this city in a whole different way, from a whole different perspective. But running into old friends and seeing people, it's bringing up these old memories of the messy parts of my life in my 20s, and I'm like, oh God, did I do that? Oh wow. Like, so it's like I'm going back to these old memories in a new layer from a new perspective, but healing it in a different way, right? Like, so healing comes in layers. Like how I would have healed that maybe like 10 years ago is different how I'm seeing it now, because I went into some uncomfortable memories and things that I participated in and did, and then looked back and I was like, I had so much compassion for that girl back in her 20s who just was very unconscious. But it's interesting because it comes up in these layers, right? And so when you think that you're done with a wound or a trauma or something that stagnates in your body, I always feel like you're going to re-encounter that wound from a different space, right? And just like you said, you thought that you were over this, relationship with a roommate and it hurt you and it was a toxic environment. I'm sure that memory came up at a place in where you are now, and you have so much more perspective and you have tools, right, to kind of process and sit with that. You're not running away and scrolling on your phone because you're like, oh, I feel something uncomfortable, I got to do something, right? You can sit with yourself and look at it.
Well, it's a great point, and I think we could talk about it all day. But the ways that we numb ourselves.
Oh gosh, that's a whole different episode.
and like the phone thing, I think, and I can't say to enough people to watch the movie Everywhere, Everything at All Times. And they're also talking about like the internet of like having all these different options in front of you at all times. And it's cool to a degree, but it can also be completely overwhelming and you can get very nihilistic fast. So you have to be aware of like when you're touching this thing, like you're putting your face in the blast reactor, there's a lot of different stuff coming at you.
Well, and it's also like having a lack of awareness of your body, right? If you're just mentally in the space-time continuum of like Instagram, right? You're in a different world, right? If you're not even aware of your body in the present moment, and you're like not even breathing, it's trippy what can happen to you, right? Like you're just like, poof, gone. So I think that the way in which we do heal it is in those different layers of integration, and it's gonna come back. Like memories will come up and discomforts from your past will always surface, like these old wounds, right? So yeah,
I got something I'm working on. So what do you see as hurdles to being a student? I've heard a lot of amazing things from you in terms of the inability to get discomfortable, get out of their comfort zone, expectations of wanting them to fix them. What are hurdles that you might have had in your own practice, in your own life, or that you see as a guide?
I think that the biggest obstacle is not taking personal accountability. Expecting that somebody's going to do it for you. That's the biggest one. And they think that I actually don't believe that those are the people who are actually ready to do the work, who are really ready for healing. They're still kind of floating on the surface looking for this
magic wand, magic bullet.
Yeah, like the magic wand, like I want this, I want this, I want to move forward. Those are
I'm going to vision board my way out of this.
Yeah. So I listen to The Secret and wait for that frickin' Ferrari to end up in my driveway so I can be happy. Yeah, it's the words to pay attention to. Anybody listening, and you hear yourself saying like, I'll be happy when, you know, I'll be happy. You're not going to be happy when you're healed. Life is still going to throw you some curveballs, right? But I think that languaging, self-auditing, like pay very close attention to the languaging that you're saying to yourself when you're looking for somebody is like, oh, this is the one. I've heard that phrase right there. Oh, I think this person, this healer, this teacher, this guide, this coach is going to be the one that's going to help me get out of my rut. The one, right? So this kind of like inner languaging that you're using to find, again, the guru. And it's going to tell you how to do everything.
And I think you and I have talked about it too. I think there's a level of vulnerability as well too. Like, and especially as you're learning with that teacher, some teachers you feel more comfortable with instantly. It's on you to self-regulate your level of vulnerability, but there is a component of vulnerability there too. And I think in a minute or two, we'll probably transition into like the talk of initiation, right? Like the cosmic cooking pot. But you and I have talked about it a lot too, of like accountability and vulnerability. And accountability is, it goes from like everything is happening to me to everything is happening for me. And I understand that that's very much a new age concept. But to a certain degree, if you're giving away your power, if it's always something else, then you're not going to take any accountability in fixing it.
Yeah.
So the other side of it is it's the yin and yang energy of it, right? It's the there's this, it just is, and then the warrior energy of imposing your will upon something, doing it. And the vulnerability component is huge as well too, because you can change to the degree that you're willing to change your story. And you have to be willing to evaluate your story and look at all the different roles that you play within it, whether it's the trickster, the lover, the warrior, the king, the magician, the troll, the evil person. How have you done that? You know, and then the deeper levels of healing is like seeing all those characters within your own life story, seeing their perspective, integrating, accepting, forgiving, healing, loving them. And I'm not there for every one of the characters in my life, but I think accountability and vulnerability are huge. And there's so many people. I think the third thing that I notice is perspective change. And you know people that are doing the work because, one, you have crunchy ass conversations with them. Sometimes they're like, hey, hold some space for me. I'm working on this. But they'll constantly challenge you when you're experiencing your own limiting thoughts. And they go, oh, well, I've heard you say this a few times. Why are you still here? Why are you still there? So you can notice within them that they're doing the work, that they're no longer holding, in my case, they're no longer putting up with the same bullshit that I was bringing to them before. And so some people hear the words and I have some of these people that I love, but like they use words like consciousness and high vibration and, you know, they do
high vibes.
They high vibes, but they do the prayer hands every time you're like, you give them oh, thank you. You know, it's like,
put your hands down. Stop it.
Cut your fucking hands off.
Stop it. The most inauthentic expression of spirituality right there.
Yeah. It's like in Lego Batman. He's walking around with people. He's like, prayer hands. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry to rip on those people who are namasteing all the time. Anyway.
But you got any more thoughts on this, or do we want to shift to initiation?
No, I think you perfectly. That was beautifully said. So let's dive into initiation.
So our dear friend Chin brought this up to me the other day. We were talking about this subject matter, and she was talking about, like, you know, a container is something that is like there for like the cooking. You know, shit's gonna get messy. Your juices are gonna.
The big soup. The big soup of just the shitstorm of soup.
And the ritual leader, the teacher, is facilitating the space, whether we're talking in a sacred space or whether we're talking in a therapist chair or you're just having coffee with somebody. They're giving you the space to unfold and to look at your stuff, but you also have to be vulnerable, right? You have to know that some part of you is going to die so that the new part can be reborn.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Incredibly important. So if you are not, I've actually experienced this in sessions where I've had to let go of a client the first couple sessions, and I said, you know what, you're presenting as this, and there's no way for me to actually help you and get in. I can't get in. You won't let me in. So therefore, there's no dynamic relationship here, right? So if you are coming with such armoring, right? Such armoring and the inability to project your fears and blame the teacher, right? This happens quite often. It's not your time for healing. You're not ready to be cooked. Because once you step into that container where vulnerability is absolutely essential, because, and again, if you have the right teacher, if you have the right guide that is going to hold you in integrity and safety, your job as the student is to be vulnerable, to actually get naked and show what is there, right?
Get naked emotionally, spiritually.
Don't take off your clothes to your therapist, anybody. don't do that.
And they hit me with the restraining order. Natalie and Alex fucked me up.
No. I mean, vulnerability is the ultimate vulnerability is the nakedness, all the flaws, all the cringy parts of yourself that you don't want to let other people see that, right? That's where the magic is for a student coming into any initiatory healing. Absolutely necessary, because otherwise you're just hitting the walls of the ego, constantly hitting the walls of the ego, and you're just going to be circulating around in all these false personas. You're really not getting to the core of that person.
So do you think we explained what initiation process is, or?
Yeah, do you want to explain it?
I see it as something that occurs a little further on the healing path. I think of it as almost like a ritual. I mean, but it's, in our case, your and I's with class, it's something that took place over a course of 2 to 3 years, but is also happening and still happening, unfolding new initiations for new initiations. It's the shedding of old to come into the new. You're being called into a greater energy for yourself and for others.
Yeah.
And that's where you really start doing the work, is when you're doing it out of service for others. And a good teacher is a good student. So when you find a good teacher, they're still doing all the work. They're still doing the shadow work. They're still having this and that. They're not. Oh, I've figured it out.
I've hit a level of enlightenment. I've arrived.
Yeah,
and you meet me here.
For me, that's huge. The teachers are still students themselves, and you see how much they dig in. And I mean, like, you talk about Kurt, right? He's seeing more clients than he's ever seen. He shows up. He's doing the work out of love, and like, when he has a class, he goes back and studies all the stuff that he already read again. He goes, oh wow, this time reading it for the 10th time, I'm really looking at this differently. He's doing that he's doing the homework that we're doing as well too. So like, a good leader leads from the front. A good teacher is a good student. They're humbling and they're aware of the process of what you're going through as well too, because they're constantly being initiated. They're going through that as well. So for me, initiation is just a shedding of the old to move into new, higher levels of love, light, and darkness, and the whole spectrum of everything. But you're prepared, kind of like a video game. Like, you level up, you beat some bosses, you get some little things, and now, like, if in order to move to the next boss, you have to get yourself there through the different accolades and leveling up. You're now leveled to a new level. You're just constantly doing that.
Yet it's not a hierarchy.
Did I describe a hierarchy?
No, but just like, I kind of see video games as like, I got to level like 25. I'm like hierarchically better than you, but it's not that. It's actually like,
you could describe it.
It's even more humbling when you probably get to the top. You're like, wow, I still don't know anything. I still don't know anything, right? And like, so I love that initiation. I think the initiation starts when you are presented with something that is, painful. Life is going the wrong way. Perceived as the wrong way, or you're not getting what you want. You're stuck. Somebody passes. These are all forms and ways that spirit presents the start of an initiation, right? And that initiation, whether it's meeting somebody to kind of take you through that process, whether it's the guide, the teacher, that's the container for you to get really messy. And we're talking about that vulnerability piece. This is absolutely necessary. Like, if you're not willing to get messy and start seeing those real icky parts of yourself, it's going to be, the whole initiatory process is going to be halted.
Yeah.
It's going to be stopped. And your learning will halt, right? So, and then you get redirected back into conditioning and patterns and things that you have been operating from that keep you in the same loops.
Yeah, and even in like sacred space, you see people connecting to their divine and also giving up power to the shaman.
The
shaman wow.
The shaman. It's so funny. I remember I did my first, what's it called when you go, sweat lodge. I did my very first sweat lodge. This was, I think, almost like 8 years ago. And I remember walking into the sweat lodge and I was so enamored with the leader and thinking to myself, I wonder what he sees in me. Like, like this egotistical way of like, I had that feeling. Like,
I hope they tell me how special I think I am.
Yeah, like that kind of shit. That we all have been there. I'm gonna be fully honest. I was like, I went like, because this is when I was in my first, when I was still developing kind of like my knowing or my intuition. I was like, ooh, I wonder what he sees in me. Guy didn't pay attention to me at all. I was like, oh, bummer. But
Yeah.
I think that,
Is this where they tell me that I'm the next white messiah?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like, yeah, how about you? Yeah. Um, so it was all of these ways in which we're looking to be, our ego to be recognized, right? This is the ego wanting attention, wanting to be recognized or something. And that's the spiritual ego. Boom, right there.
Yeah.
So I've had people say in session, do you see me having this? Or they want to know like what I think of them, and
where do I land on the Monopoly board?
Yeah, or they've asked questions, and I've asked these questions too in different sessions with healers and stuff, like almost like they want me to gauge them on who they are, and I'm like, I'm not giving you any judgment. You are you, perfectly beautiful, beautifully expressed you, right? So it's really interesting how people, when you are, in order to be a good student, being guided by somebody, the gurudom thing, that's something very powerful that people really need to let go of, because I feel like it's taking away your innate power and sovereignty over yourself.
Yes. And I will say, I think we're hardwired for that from birth. You're looking up towards your parents,
Sure. Yeah,
your gods.
100%.
We're
You're looking for,
always looking for something outside of ourselves, which, my weird thing, I think that's where society is falling, is like it's all built on an outside model. It's not built on an inside model.
yeah. It's all these like false structures outside of ourselves, and like, oh, if I do that over there, I'm going to get this inside and feel. Yeah. So to be a good student, Alex, what do you think?
Own your shit. Be accountable. Be willing to be vulnerable to the level of degree that you feel safe with that. Witness the perspective change within yourself and within others. Realize that it's not a linear thing.
You're layered. You're multifaceted and layered, and it's messy. Get in your messiness.
Yeah, and you can tell, because you can tell when you're doing the work, and there's other people around you who are on their own path, and they're hearing you where they're coming from, but they're also introducing new perspectives. You're able to hear these other things, and then there's some people that just, they're drinking the Kool-Aid. They understand the vernacular. They've read a few books. They've seen a few YouTube things and some podcasts, and they're talking. They're using the same language that you are, but you're speaking a different language. They're using the same words, but you're speaking a different language. And I think being finding a good teacher is one of the most important things, especially as traumatized as modern society is in the many different ways. But if you don't know how to do the work, you're not going to get the results.
Mm-hmm. And I will say that it does take a good teacher to direct you and guide you in the questioning of, asking the right questions to help you unfold, right?
Yes.
Absolutely imperative. But you as a student receiving those questions, it is your job as a good student to allow those questions to penetrate, allow those questions to really open you up into all these yucky parts of yourself. That right there is a very important part of being a student, is to let your ego go, to allow all of these shadows to come up, and to feel safe enough in that container to cook in all of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's our homework for ourselves going to be? We're talking about being a good student. How are we going to make sure we're good students ourselves before their next podcast recording?
So let me think of this. I think my homework is going to be doing a little journal entry.
Mm.
Okay? And I love using this one with clients. You know, often we come into session and we have, you know, the things that we're stuck on, the things that we are trying to fix.
Mm.
Ask yourself, why do I love blank? Okay, so I'll give you an example. For me growing up, my nervous system was hardwired for chaos. So I will journal, what do I love about chaos?
Mm.
And you can just write down all of the things. So whatever your challenge is, ask yourself, what do I love about that? See it's pretty crazy what comes out.
I'm gonna do that homework as well. I would add to that, as you're exploring that challenge with yourself, tap into your higher knowing, your inner guide, and say, why am I here? Why is spirit bringing me here? Right? You know, like I like to heal with laughter, and I've said it one time, I'll say it a million times. Laughter involves you pulling yourself out of something to find the humor in it. And if you can't laugh at something, I'm saying some things are very serious and not laughable, or not laughable yet.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I here? Why is spirit bringing me here? So if you're subscribing to the new age theory of I'm co-creating with something bigger than me, okay, then why did I choose to bring myself to this moment?
I like that.
So that's something.
Do you want to do two homework? Two.
I think I can do 2 homework assignments. Okay.
So in the face of the challenge that you are currently having, whatever that challenge is, the discomfort, the whatever you're seeking help with, ask spirit, why am I here right now? And what is spirit presenting this for? How is this for me? Or why am I here? And then ask yourself, why do I love this? You will just see all sorts of patterns and interesting things. Just do it like a free writing. It's powerful.
Yeah, I think like a journal thing, like you're talking about.
Yeah, but it takes like 2 minutes. Do it before you go to bed. You'll be like, oh, I actually like this because of this. You'll see all the ways in which these.
And before bed, you don't have to have an answer, right? And allowing your subconscious or your
you may not
or whatever to provide those answers, and if it doesn't happen, keep asking. Another thing about being a student, keep fucking trying, keep doing it.
Keep going, never stop.
I mean, don't hit yourself, don't knock out the side of the wall with your head, but you know, don't just give up after the first try. So that would be the other thing I would say.
All right. Well, I'm excited to report on this. I've got some cuckoo stuff happening, so I'm gonna dive. I'll bring a little vulnerability to the next podcast.
Me as well. I mean, I'm finally surrendering and going to see Kurt again because, like, you know, I'm like, oh, I've got all these tools, I know how to do it, and then now I'm like, no, I need some help. I'm going through some shit.
And next podcast, get a little bit more dirt on Alex and I.
Ooh. Look out.
Well, not dirt, you know what I mean. But okay, that's a wrap. Let's get cracking on our journal entries.
Go be good students.
Yeah, go be a good student.
Stop fucking slacking. Stop listening to us. Find your own inner guide and go be.
Get out of here, skedaddle.
Yeah, okay. We're done.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Huffing Spirit Podcast. Remember, you are your own teacher. Take what resonates and leave the rest. For more info, follow us on Instagram at Huffing Spirit Podcast and subscribe on Spotify or iTunes. Bye for now.